You're good to go.
Okay. I call to order today's meeting of the Finance Committee. It's Monday, January 4th, 2021. Time is 4:30. I'm Laura McNally, 5th Ward City Councilperson and Chairwoman. I'm going to start as usual with our roll call that I'm going to do for everyone today. We have Jennifer Ozinger, Rick Deek, Anita Davis, Basha Adamzak, Beverly Hosey, Chuck Shasho, Dawn Turnage, Demaine Kitchen, Aaron Bishop, Harry Johnson, Jonathan Huff, Julius Oliver, Kyle Mizak, Mike Ray, Nikki Posterly, Samantha Turner, Tito Brown, Chief Finley, Jean Leeson, Jeff Limbian. I think that's everyone. Okay. We'll just get started under ordinances today. First one here is our reconciliation budget for 2020. And I'm just going to let Kyle say a few words about it, and then we can take questions.
Thank you. Through the chair, the reconciliation budget that you have in front of you provides that all of the funds that we have on our balance sheet are in a positive balance. And what it means then that for calendar 2020, we have met our fiduciary responsibility in that we end the year with no deficits across any city major funds. I want to point out that, yes, we did have a significant income tax shortfall. And if you round the numbers, it's roughly $2.4 million over our forecast of what was roughly $46.2 million. So we ended up collecting nearly 2.4 less. And as a result, that is going to impact our baseline going forward next year. However, we were able to absorb that deficit because of all of the one-time monies that were provided to the city. The largest one-time funding being the CARES Act, that we were able to reduce expenditures by approximately $5.3 million. We reduced those expenditures in the police department, the fire department, the health department, a small portion in the finance department, and another smaller portion in 911. What we did with those monies was we reduced our payroll expenditures. So instead of actually utilizing those monies to offset our revenue shortfall, in essence, they reduced the expenditures that we budgeted for. On top of that, we also received $2.8 million in worker comp rebates. We received 3 rebates, the last one being for $1.7 million. So we returned those funds back to those operating funds that generated those premiums for calendar year 2018 and calendar year 2019. We were informed by the governor and the General Assembly that we will not see a workers' comp rebate for calendar 2021. So these one-time revenues have been eliminated. We may see them in future years, but we cannot count on any of those monies next year. One good thing is we did not budget for any of this. So this one-time revenue is an additional windfall. So we have 5.3, an additional 2.8. We also generated $400,000 in furlough savings. So today we applied all of the unemployment costs across all of the departments, and that amounted to roughly $195,000. So that was our cost that we are responsible for those employees that we kept on the payroll and paid medical insurance. But across all of them, we saved a total of, again, it's a rounding number, so it rounds up to $400,000 in employee payroll, pension, and Medicare savings as a result of asking those employees to furlough. In addition, the general fund, through the departments doing a stellar job of trying to curtail their expenditures. And we're talking about expenditures that they could manage with regards to purchases outside of payroll and customary contracts that are annual that we need to sustain our operations, saved an additional $400,000. So the combination of those savings offset by the income tax means that we're going to go into 2021 with a general fund surplus of about $6.5 million. Any questions about how we're ending the year and why we have this large sum of funding? Okay, so given that there are no questions on the surplus, we now need to consider what is our obstacle when we start to plan for the 2021 budget. We know right now that 8 months of last year, we saw a revenue shortfall of approximately 2.4 million. We have to now be conscientious that if we were to extrapolate that out over 12 months, if we were to see no employment recovery next year, that'll amount to around $3.1 million in income tax that we no longer can collect as a result of those employees not being brought back on the job. So that's our worst case scenario, I believe, as long as we don't see it grow, meaning that we don't see additional layoffs of any activity going forward. That would mean that we need to now find a substitute for that income loss. And right now, I would suggest that we make up that shortfall with at least using these surplus dollars to cover that amount. The hope is that we start to see a recovery and we don't actually need to use all that 3.1, that we actually start making some inroads and seeing employment growth occur. And so that our base maybe improves before the end of the calendar year. And hopefully that gives us some hope for 2022, because if our base does not show any improvement, this will be our new baseline. And each year now going forward, we'll be growing off of that reduced base, but that reduced base will be $3 million less than what we're accustomed to. So we do have the accommodation, we do have the ability to accommodate that shortfall with this surplus. However, the one area that we still do not have an answer on is what is going to happen with refunds. Right now, we are still awaiting word of the court case, and we do not know if we're going to have to return income tax that was collected in 2020 as a refund in 2021. We're going to start working on the budget that we're going to assume that we're not going to be impacted by that, because we should have an answer sometime in early February of the decision, I hope. And if it's going to be postponed, any postponement past April 15th works in our favor, because that means that we will not see a refund of income taxes if it is approved. Those would be postponed until 2022, giving us, and I would believe all cities across Ohio, a way to start to kind of come to terms with how we're going to live without those income tax dollars as a result of employees being able to request refunds if they're not working at their work site 5 days a week. Right now, I have estimated that a 10% impact on our withholding would amount to roughly a $3.3 million loss. If we were to see that increase to 20%, we would see a $6.6 million loss. So when you couple that on top of our reduced income tax base, if that were to happen, we would exhaust this surplus in 2021 and not have any surplus for 2022. I do not believe that the General Assembly is going to harm all the cities in Ohio in one quick, decision. I think if there's any fourth consideration of the impact, that they would implement this change over a number of years, asking the cities to come up with solutions on how they would deal with this shortfall. So I think it is prudent that we move in 2021 as we are working on to move from fully insured to self-insured, which I've got with the administration's assistance and with the insurance committee's approval to go effective February 1st. I would like to highlight that in 1 year, by paying premiums for dental and vision and not paying, by paying medical bills for dental and vision and not paying premiums to Anthem, but just paying an administrative fee, we have already saved in 1 year $62,000 in just dental and vision costs, or in essence, we didn't pay those premiums, so we have those savings, and they are sitting in a fund that would allow us in the future to consider either reducing those insurance premiums or in essence being prepared for a rainy day. But in essence, what we are doing is building a reserve, our own reserve. Now, one could argue that activity in dental and vision probably was subdued because people for those months of COVID did not go and visit those doctors and dentists and eye specialists. But what it did do at least was to allow us to build up a reserve. And so I believe that we can do the same thing with our health insurance, because we will not be paying absorbent premiums to Anthem. We will be paying to United Healthcare, once we go live on February 1st, a service fee for them to accommodate tracking all of our billing. But we will be responsible, like we are with dental and vision, for paying our medical insurance. And I believe that because of the rebates that we will get for prescription drugs, and as a result of not being marked up what we pay to Anthem to service us, that hopefully we will generate sizable savings and be able to use those savings potentially in 2022. That would mean that we would not make any adjustments to what we are charging the employees and the city for premiums, but we would have maybe money set aside that if we ran into a deficit because of changes in the income tax, we may be able to use some of those savings to offset that decline. Again, these are all ways that we are trying to prepare for the unknown in the future, but taking steps. And that is why the mayor has explained to you that when we start coming to you with a budget for 2021, we are going to have department heads advise us of what they are looking for in capital expenditures, but we are not going to include those in the budget. We're going to have them advise us of what they need. We're going to make you aware of those requests, but we're going to peel them out because, one, we have so much uncertainty with regards to income growth and with refunds that may materialize, that we've got to be conscientious and make sure that we continue to deliver the services, but not spend monies that we need to maybe set aside and hold off for the beginning to 2/3 of the year, and then come back to you if things start to improve and we believe that we're not going to be impacted by refunds, and ask you for your assistance in deciding how we spend those monies based on the administration prioritizing them. So the framework for setting this up is we are going to close out the year with a sizable surplus that was generated because of one-time revenues provided to us by the federal government and the state government through worker comp rebates, coupled with savings because of the furloughs and because of department curtailing spending, offsetting our deficit and providing us with a cushion to begin balancing 2021. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a few questions.
Okay.
Samantha?
Thank you, through the chair. My first question is, earlier this year, well, I guess late 2019, early 2020, when I first was coming in, there was a conversation of we needed to put money back into the general fund from the Auditors Court case. Are we doing that or are we not doing that?
Could you repeat that again? From where?
Here we go. From the court case with the auditors with the previous administration.
Through the chair. We have not moved any of those funds back to water or wastewater or environmental sanitation. I don't know if I made you all aware, but on Thursday of last week, I should have flagged you, but I was working on this reconciliation budget. The state audit was released to the federal clearinghouse, and our 2019 audit is now official, and the state auditors found no issues with what the auditors that they had chosen to come in and audit our books. So based on the audit exit interview meeting that we had, there was no additional references to any issues. However, remember, as part of that meeting, it was notated that they did repeat the finding that they wish for us to return those funds. But as of right now, given the circumstances of the unknowns with our income tax base and with our refunds, it would be my recommendation that we postpone making any returns at the immediate future just because of so much uncertainty.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. I just want to write that down. Okay, and then my next one is this past fall with the demolition of Anthony's on the River, that contractor wasn't paid. How do we reconcile that in our upcoming
Through the
budget?
chair,
Yes.
that money is still encumbered because there was a purchase order created. So the funds are set aside. They have not been expended. It's our belief, because of council's action, that we are waiting for that party to, I'm assuming, and that would be a question for the law department, most likely take us to court, where it's going to cost us, I would think, unless we are successful in negating that case. But those monies are still encumbered. And if council decides to take a different direction, that vendor can be paid out of the resources from calendar 2020. But unless something is decided, those monies will sit there for most likely 2021, because if there is a decision by the courts to award that payment, we would at least rely on those funds to at least cover the cost of the contract if we are told to by the courts. Any additional costs would have to be approved by council because it would be under a settlement.
Okay, thank you. I don't see Jeff on. And my last question is, when
Jeff is here. If you need,
oh, is he here?
if you have a question for him, he is on.
Jeff? I didn't see his name.
Yes, through the chair. I'm here.
Oh, thank you. Have we heard anything from the vendor?
Through the chair, yes, we have. I haven't spoken to him personally, but through Mike Durkin, it's clear that there's an increasing level of frustration, and I would guess unless and until something's done quickly, there will be litigation forthwith.
Understood. Thank you for that update, Jeff. And my final question is, when can we expect to begin the 2021 budget conversations?
Through the chair, it's probably going to take me the remainder of this week and probably a few days next week to actually finish this whole process of closing the books. What I can do is, our hope, because of the way that we're going to develop this budget, I believe that before, look at this calendar, I believe on Monday, the 25th, we at least can provide you with a budget that is going to at least be in balance, but will be very scaled back, in that we probably will not have sat down with department heads and come together with a priority of what is not in the budget, but we should be able to provide you with a budget that is balanced, but is very scaled back than what you're accustomed to seeing. It'll cover payroll and all the basic needs for those departments to meet their obligations, but we will not have all the other detail that we want to share with you for that meeting.
Okay, Kyle, we'll have to come up with a schedule. That's a committee of the whole meeting, so we can address that separately. Come up with a schedule.
Is there any, through the chair, does anybody else have any more questions on the reconciliation budget?
Kyle, I don't know if there's any things of note in terms of places where perhaps we spent more than we thought we were going to this year, or places where we spent less than we thought we were going to, removing the COVID situation and what we, asked departments to do.
Through the chair,
Something that stood out.
if you remove the COVID situation, we did have a small issue with fire earlier in the year with regards to overtime, that budget was exceeded. But that did not materialize any further until you then take into consideration COVID. So outside of COVID, no. All of your departments, per the request of the administration, curtailed their spending. And I'd like to flag you, what's most important is that the water fund will end the year with a surplus after encumbrances of at least $600,000 to $700,000, which makes me very happy that we were able to meet our obligations, and at the same time, with council's assistance in adjusting those monies that were being deposited into the environmental sanitation, and on July 1, diverting them back to the water fund, has made a huge significant impact. And I am pleased to say that fund will start to be replenished going forward, but we at least overcame the issue of having to end the year with it being close to or in the red. So I commend the water department for the way that they handled their budget and the fact that they met their obligations and did not exceed the threshold that we needed to achieve so that we could enter 2021 with a surplus to be able to then move forward and tackle some large projects. So I would all be thankful that Harry and his team did a very, very good job.
Thanks, Kyle. Does anyone else have questions on the reconciliation budget? Samantha?
Thank you, through the chair. I just for one point of clarity, Kyle, you said that of the 6 million or so we have as a surplus, you want to use 3 million just to plan for the slow economic recovery. And if it doesn't happen, then we can plan for something later. Is that what you said?
Through the chair, what I'm saying is we've been accustomed to collecting roughly $46 million a year in revenue. We're now going to see potentially only collecting 43. So we're going to rely on that surplus to cover that shortfall. Now, we're not going to budget the way we normally do and utilize all of those expenditures, but we're going to have to make up that shortfall with that surplus, because there's not $3 million in the general fund, police, fire, in capital operations.
Okay.
So we're going to have to subsidize the general fund going forward. We're going to have to learn to right size ourselves unless this employment base starts to improve and we actually start to see gains. But right now, I'm concerned that the impact occurred starting in last April. So the first 3 months of the year, we were on target. These first 3 months of the year, if we don't see any improvement, we're going to be short of what we achieved last year just because those 3 months were on target. It was the remaining 8.5 months that we declined. So I'm optimistic that, it's going to be difficult to get through probably March, but I'm hoping that the pain lessens and we start to see some employment growth and those numbers improve. But if they don't, our new reality is we're working with only $43 to $43.5 million a year now going forward, unless we're able to increase employment back in the city pre-levels of what happened, pre-levels of COVID-19.
Julius?
Thank you. Through the chair. Kyle, you mentioned right sizing. Are you guys or the administration having conversations about right sizing? Is that a discussion that's been had?
Through the chair. Everything is on the table. I think what we want to do first is to generate a budget and look at what it's going to cost us to provide those services without the departments getting any of their wish list of capital goods. So I think what we want to make sure first is if we're going to deliver services that we make sure we can deliver them. If we're going to have to start downsizing the workforce, I think the administration wants to verify where are we going to have to cut services then? Because if our workforce is smaller, certain services are not going to be able to be covered. And that's going to be discussions that we're going to have internally, and then we're going to share them with you if that is going to be the situation. We're hopeful that we start to see some employment growth. If we start to see some employment growth, we at least believe that, okay, with the surplus, we should be able to sustain ourselves. The question is going to be how much of it are we going to need to balance 2021, knowing that there's going to be some in reserve, but hopefully we don't encounter what we encountered this fall. An example of that was when Councilwoman McNally asked if you exempt COVID, but if you bring COVID back to the table, we incurred from September to December nearly $260,000 in extra overtime in the fire department. Why? That was all driven by COVID, because as firefighters got ill, others had to come in and overtime and replace them. We can't sustain that kind of activity, but because we had the COVID money, we used those resources to cover that. That kind of issue we've got to be conscientious of in 2021. We're going to develop a budget that is going to be very slim in that it's going to meet payroll so that we can provide services. But if something occurs where income taxes don't meet our goals, then we're going to have to either start to look at making inroad savings through payroll. And if things were to start to deteriorate with COVID, we've got to be conscientious that if we're going to start using some of those reserves that we're waiting to use in 2022, we're going to exhaust them sooner, which is then going to set us up for some serious hardship in 2022. So I guess the answer is we're very conscientious of it. We are going to be keeping an eye on it. And it's something that is dead center, my responsibility, the mayor's and the administration's, along with yours. So we are going to keep you abreast of how we see things so that if decisions need to be made quickly, that you are going to be informed. And I think it's important that we work together just because there are so many unknowns ahead of us. And one of them being this whole refunds of potential of refunds of income tax. We're waiting as you are on this court case. But if the decision comes down not in the city's favor, we are going to all have to act quickly. And it's going to be painful because we, like all the other cities in Ohio, rely on income tax to provide for our base. And if those income tax dollars dry up as a result of us having to issue refunds, it's going to change the landscape across all of Ohio cities. And it's going to be our responsibility that we provide a balanced budget, because that's not going to change in the Constitution. So it's going to require us to act quickly if that is the case. So it's in all of our best interest to have open channels of communication between all of us, because there is so much uncertainty and none of us have any of the answers. And those answers are hopefully going to arrive at our doorstep relatively soon.
Thank you, Kyle. Are there any other questions on the budget? Okay, thanks, Kyle, for all of that information. I'm going to move on. I think we're good to move on at this point. to number 2 here. Any questions on this piece? Okay. Item number 3. This is
Through
a
the chair.
grant.
Through
Oh,
the
I'm
chair,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Anita?
Going
Yep.
back to, I'm sorry, but going back to item number 2, it's, I don't know who's, it's
Anita,
$48,000, but how many units are we talking about?
through the chair, Anita, this is
Go
Aaron.
ahead, Aaron.
There's 4. It says 4 touchless hand washing stations. And for these stations, there'll be station 1 at the Federal Place. The second one will be at the Eugenia Atkinson Rec Center. The third one will be at the municipal courthouse. And then the 4th will be at City Hall.
And who will have access to these things?
You know what's nice about them is they're big, but they're mobile. So let's say anyone really can utilize them if they need, but I was seeing in the future, we could bring them down to our, anything that we do at the Cavelli Center and at the amphitheater, as well as if we have stuff like on Federal Plaza. I mean, we constantly tell people, wash your hands, and then we stick them out in a place where there's nowhere to wash their hands. So I think these will be great to have, and they could just hook up to, the waters that people are using to hook up their trailers to. So I think that we'll get some really good use out of them. But again, I think it's important, especially in Federal Place, where we have so much traffic in and out, and people are very concerned that people aren't washing their hands. So if we have these right in the open area where people can utilize them, I think it's important. I know that the county bought one of these for every school in Mahoning County. So you can go to different schools. Fitch, Ursuline has one. And so we thought this would be nice to have 4 of them. And then again, we can have them forever. We can utilize them when we do outdoor activities. Again, we'll have to, get trucks to move them. But, for places that are downtown, we could roll them out or whatever it may be. And I just think that they're really nice. I've seen them at YSU, has a couple throughout the campus, and they're really sturdy. And we'll have the City of U on 2 of them. One of them will have Parks and Rec all over it, and the other one will have the Public Health Department logos on them.
Through the chair, follow-up.
Go ahead, Anita.
What's the funding source?
Anita, through the chair, this funding source comes from a grant. This was an early grant that we received through our COVID-19 to buy equipment and stuff. So this is one of the grants that we were not able to carry over into 2021. So we needed to spend this money, and we thought this would be a good idea. It went through our Board of Health, and then now up to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Aaron, who's going to sort of maintain them, make sure they themselves are clean, they have the proper, soap or whatever it needs, the water's working, all that stuff?
Through the chair, I know Kevin Flynn with Building and Grounds, he's the one that kind of went to YSU to make sure that we could have them in our places and where we would set them up. So I'm hoping that, I'll talk with Dawn and make sure that's, her staff, the one that's at the Eugenia Rec Center, will be able to we'll keep control of it at the health department. And then, I could talk with someone at City Hall, as well as talk with someone at Federal Place that will be able, to continue to stock that and make sure it's working and is clean and looks proper.
Any other questions on item 2 here? Thank you, Aaron. Go back down to number 3. Any questions here? Right, I don't see any more questions on number 3. Number 4 is in relation to that, so I'm guessing no questions there. Okay, and number 5, questions here. Okay, I'm not seeing anything on this one. Okay. That is the agenda for today. Under miscellaneous, does anybody have anything under miscellaneous?
I just have one more question for Cal, Lauren.
Sure. Go ahead, Samantha.
Thank you. Cal, with the CARES Act deadline being extended, did we already allocate all of our dollars, or are you still able to move things around?
Through the chair, I actually am required by the 6th to report how we spent all of our funds. So no, there is no more time within the CARES money that came from the federal government to the city directly for us to do anything with that. There is money still in the CDA budget with CARES, with COVID funds, just as is the health department, but they're also under a very strict timetable. You can ask Erin, my staff has been going to Walmart and assisting her by purchasing and spending those funds so that they could have the ability to meet that deadline. So I'm not sure what restrictions she may be under or CPED with regards to HUD funds, but the funds that we received directly, those monies had to be earmarked and encumbered before the end of the calendar year. And that's what I'm required to report on Wednesday.
Thank you. Anything else under miscellaneous? I just wanted to bring up, just to wrap up from our last meeting, finance meeting, we had some pieces of proposed legislation that I thought would be on today's agenda. I know we had asked for some additional information, so I was just wondering if the mayor could let us know when we can anticipate seeing that.
Through the chair,
Yes.
I can provide that to, through the chair, I can provide that to council as a whole. Actually, I was going to ask if there was maybe there was a need once I send the information to you, if council would feel that we needed to have another finance committee meeting to go over those documents. But we are prepared. Both departments have submitted information, and we can send you a packet. I'll send it through Valencia, and she can send it to all of you. And then you can let me know if you want a finance meeting to go over that information, or you just wanted to submit it to council for thoughts for approval for the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, send that over. We're actually working on our finance calendar meetings
Sure.
for the next couple of months, because I think there's some holidays that mess up our Monday meetings.
Sure.
So, yep. Okay, I just wanted to check on that because I know that was the last topic of conversation at our meeting, previous finance meeting.
We are ready, and we will send that to you. Thank you.
Okay. Anita.
This is not a finance question, but since Lauren's here, Erin is here. Erin, is there a tip line that people can call to report businesses and things that are not in compliance with our governor's directives about wearing a mask inside the businesses? Is there a number people can call?
Yes, Anita, if you call the health department, what we do is we call the Bureau of Workers' Comp. They go out and do the mask checks. And I know you had sent me that voicemail the other day, and we did send that along to that the BWC. So let me get that number, then they can call directly. I don't have it on me right now, but I can look it up and get back to you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I will take a motion. Basha, do you have one?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I would like to make a motion to forward ordinances 1 through 5 to the council floor for consideration of passage.
Second.
Okay. Take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we are adjourned at 5:12.